We have here a 2011 Volkswagen Jetta. It is a 2-liter TDI, and customer's complaint is the battery goes dead. He had the battery replaced like 6 months ago, and so he thinks there's something draining it in the car. I absolutely hate parasitic drain problems. Hopefully it'll be something simple like a battery. I hope that would make me very happy. But let's. My process kind of goes like this. Of course, we always test the battery. I like to let it sit overnight and see how much voltage. Of course, we do amp testing with an inductive amp clamp at the battery cables to see if the amperage is actually leaving the battery. And luckily, Volkswagens usually have these 3 legs at the underhood fuse box, and you can kind of see where the voltage is going if it's going somewhere. But it always goes into the big fuse box. It's always a problem, a very annoying, hard to find problem. Then we do voltage drop testing across the fuses that are powered when the car is off. What that means is that if there's current flowing, then there'll be a very minor voltage drop across any resistance. And a fuse has resistance. It's very small resistance. So you turn your meter to milliamps and you try and measure the milliamp draw. I haven't been that isn't always successful because there are parts on the car that are not fused that you can't, or maybe you don't find all the fuses. Maybe there's a fuse box you don't know about. So there's always a problem. It's always difficult. Let's test the battery and look for an amp draw, and we'll go from there. We are going to do a battery test here, and I wanted to show this. Volkswagen batteries don't show a CCA rating. They show this right here. It says 660A EN. So that's their rating on the battery, and you have to enter that in order to test the battery with this tester here. This guy said he replaced the battery less than 6 months ago, so I don't think this is going to be a battery problem. But we'll enter in the 640 EN and see what it shows. Okay, the tester is declaring the battery good with 677 EN at 105%, even though the battery voltage is a little low at 12.48. I have my amp clamp here, and I can do some testing here to see where the current's going if it's a parasitic drain problem. But I guess I'll try and start it, see if it starts, or maybe I should do some parasitic drain checks first before the computers wake up and stuff. Okay, so we're going to turn on our device, and we're setting it to the 1 millivolt equals 10 milliamp scale. And see, it's showing a reading there, but I push the button to 0 and it goes to 0. Let's clamp the cable. Sit that there. Hopefully that's in frame. And I'll clamp this part of the cable. This cable runs over to the fuse box, and all the power for all the accessories go through this cable. So as you can see, there is some parasitic drain there. Unfortunately, I did have the door open earlier, so a computer might be awake, but that's showing 250 milliamps of draw. The common spec that I hear at training seminars is 50 milliamps, but on later cars, with no problem, I've definitely checked them and had them have more than 50. So you kind of have to take the 50 milliamp spec with a grain of salt. Anything more than 100, I would definitely say is a problem, but see, it just went up. But so let's try and see if we can see where that's going. This cable right here is just that same cable, so that checking that should be the exact same. This goes over to the alternator, and really nothing significant on there. It kind of shows a negative voltage, which I don't buy, but so 370 millivolts or milliamps. and that really shows nothing going out of there. One of the things I do to kind of speed up a process on a parasitic drain problem is to check for voltage on the fuses, because a fuse that doesn't have voltage on it isn't going to be a fuse that's using amperage. So looks like all of these have voltage on them. None of these have voltage on them. These fuses you can't really check that way unless you remove this top plastic cap. So I'm going to check all those for voltage drop across the fuse. And you have to have your meter set on a millivolt scale. And that one shows nothing. And that one shows nothing. There's a chart available on the internet that kind of shows you how much voltage drop should be across specific fuses when there's a certain amount of voltage on them. See that one? That one shows nothing. Okay, so this check, if there's current flowing, there will be a voltage drop, even across something with very little resistance like a fuse. Fuse obviously is designed to flow amperage and will should flow it without much voltage drop at all. But these meters are very accurate, and if you turn it on the millivolt scale, you can see a very small voltage drop across these fuses. Now I'm just checking here to make sure the current is still going somewhere. It does still seem to be going through there. About 200 milliamps. Nothing going through the alternator wire. And really nothing going through that wire, which I haven't done the research yet to know what that wire is. So it's either going through one of these fuses that I can't easily check, or maybe one of these relays. Generally pulling these relays out, it's not the best check in the world because it wakes computers up sometimes. I think I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. Had this car for 2 or 3 days now and haven't come up with anything conclusive. Oops. While I'm at it, I might as well pull these fuses out. See, that woke something up. Our amperage draw actually went up. I wish they'd use fuses that were testable, like these, for everything. Also these, because these higher amp fuses, but they certainly make larger fuses that are testable. I've pulled all these fuses out, all these relays out, haven't lost any amp draw by doing so. So that isn't going to give us any direction. I'm seeing this cable here. It just hooks into the bottom half of the fuse. So I guess the next step would be to print a wiring schematic, look at a power supply schematic. Obviously I have another fuse box inside I can check amp draw on. One point the customer did make is that the radio didn't work at all. It is the factory radio, and he was hoping maybe I could get that working. Maybe there's a fuse behind it or something like that, but maybe it has failed and maybe it is causing his problem. I don't know. Whenever you do a parasitic drain diagnosis and you have the door open, you want to latch that so the computer will think the door is closed, because that may keep the car's computer awake. There's no fuse box in there. Fuse box is in there. So just like the fuse box up front, I check and see which ones have power, because that saves you a bunch of time rather than trying to check millivolt draw. Anyway, I'm not going to show that because you can't see anything up in there anyway. Okay, I've been crawling around underneath this dash for about a half hour doing voltage drop tests on the fuse under there. Way too many of these fuses are powered up down here. It took a huge amount of time. And I come up with, I don't know if I mentioned it in the introduction, but the customer did tell me that the radio didn't work. And since the radio doesn't work, I have to pull the radio out because there's a fuse behind there on almost all these cars. And if that fuse is blown, maybe replacing the fuse will fix the problem. But if the fuse is not blown, then maybe the radio failing is the cause of our parasitic drain. So I'm going to change direction here because I've just spent a bunch of time on this process and it doesn't seem to be getting me anywhere. So I will pull the radio out and we'll go from there. Now I'm sure the lighting isn't the greatest in here, but I've got to get this job done and move on to the next. When you remove these, you got to be really careful not to mar the surface, generate a customer complaint. This is my favorite trim removal tool here. This is not. So I kind of start right here and get it opened up a little bit, and then as you go along the side, you usually pop out. I'm getting a good view of the back of my head there. There it went. Over here. Now the clips on the back of this, looks like two antenna plug-ins. You have to lift up on the white plastic part to release it. Both of them kind of have a thing like that. And then this right here, and then inside there you can see that blue fuse there. I can't see anything down inside there, and it ain't the type of fuse that you can touch. So I guess we'll just take it out with a test light and test it at the battery. Now I probably should have demonstrated for the viewers that the radio didn't work. I did try it myself, but unfortunately I wasn't thinking about the video that much. I was pretty frustrated with regards to the problem. And so I'm trying to demonstrate here that whether or not the fuse is good. And the fuse is good, yet the radio doesn't work. So at this point what I'm going to do is hook an amp clamp to it. Hook an amp clamp right here and see if my drain is less. Okay, I am zeroing the amp clamp, hooking it on there, and it's showing 900, but I got the doors open so the dome lights are on, all that stuff. I think I had to take the transmission out of park in order to get that bezel off the radio, and so I need to go put it in park, turn the key completely off, shut the doors, etc. So let's see it drop while we're doing that. Okay, so obviously our amp draw is going down some. I think the dome light might still be on. Yes, the dome light is still on. Okay, the dome light did go off. I'm going to arm the alarm. Of course, that makes the amp draw go back up. But then it'll go back down as that computer goes to sleep. And right away, it's down much lower. I don't like the fact that it's in the negative. It says negative 0.3. So it didn't go to 0 when I removed it. So let's bring it out and we'll zero this. Stick it back on there. There it is. That's around 170 and dropping. And that shows about 70 milliamps, 60 milliamps, 50 milliamps. I think the radio's the problem. We will let it sit for about 20 minutes and see what happens, and I'll get back with you. Okay, I'm pretty confident the radio is going to fix this. I've talked to the customer and he's going to probably get an aftermarket radio. He's not decided yet, but if nothing else, I'm going to have him drive the car for a few days to confirm that it's fixed. As long as the battery don't go dead, then he's golden. The diagnostic process on these, in order to nail down the problem, is difficult. I did not nail down the problem on this one. I just got lucky that coincidentally the radio didn't work and we had to pull the radio out anyway, and that pointed us to the problem. But it is fixed. I spent a lot more time than I really should have on it, and if you learned anything from this video, click the like button down below and subscribe. It really helps. And if you want to financially contribute to the continued production of these videos, visit my website at www.kansascitytdi.com and find the donate icon.